Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now let's welcome our main speaker for tonight, Pete.
Hi, I'm Pete. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Pete.
And I thought Jarrell gave a great talk. Thanks, Jarrell. I'm from around here and I speak here a lot, so it's like sometimes when I start to speak, there's kind of a rush to the exit, and Jarrell almost got squished by that woman leaving. Heard this guy. It's sort of like my karma, because when I was new, I used to go to a lot of meetings, and there were a lot of speakers that gave a canned pitch, and I used to be a good memorizer, so I would always whisper to the guy in front of me what the person's next line was going to be. And now he's going to tell the story about the strawberries and stuff. So, no, it's sort of like my comeuppance now that all the people I know the best head for the door. My regular gig is, thank you, Gay, God bless you. My regular gig here is usually on New Year's night, and Jewish New Year's night. Those are my two biggest engagements here at the Marina Center. And the New Year's night one is, they save me for last, and it's always, it's Monica, Candace, Branny, Joe, and Nasser. Yeah. And we really have a great time. We have a great time. So I really like Jarrell's talk. That was really wonderful. You know, there's what a treat. I'm really glad I got to come in and share that with you, share your birthday with you. Way to go. Made me feel great. And happy birthday, Kim. And that story, you know, of Kim going to the hospital, you know, is a scenario that's played out millions of times in this fellowship. It's the greatest, you know. I was looking at this sign on the podium here, this man that we lost, and reminded me I spoke at this Alano Club down in Newport Beach a month ago or so, and the wall behind the podium is a concrete block wall, and it probably has like 500 concrete blocks that are like 3 inches by 6 inches, and on each concrete block, the people that hang out at the club, they write their name, you know, and some of them have their full name like Joe Wisniewski, and some of them just have like a little nickname like Serenity Sally, you know, and when someone dies, they just write a little in memory of over the person's name. In this wall of about 1,000 names, about half of the names had in memory of over them. And I looked at it and I was so moved by that, and it was like the sort of tapestry of the humanity that is that club, that is our fellowship, you know. And I always think that the most precious resource we have here, along with our contact with our higher power, is each other. And that person that's beside you, they could be gone tomorrow, you know. And all of the things that we strive for while we're sober, to make more money and to, you know, hope to be in better health and find the right boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, you know, all those things never fix us, you know. But what we really have here, I think, and I always say this, nobody really gives a shit how long you're sober for or how much money you make or how many people you sponsor or whatever, you know. What the real deal here is the love that we give and take and the help that we give and take. And that's what makes this fellowship rich. And I could stand here and tell you stories until this time tomorrow night about the fun and the wonderful times I've had and the meaningful things that have happened to me here that have changed my life and then made my life rich and made me glad I'm alive. And they all have to do with other people in this program, and nothing has to do with running the marathon in 3 hours, And so that's just like, and that's just my own opinion. I'll try not to tell any of my usual stories because this has kind of been such a regular stop, and I don't want to get to the point where everybody leaves before I talk, and then just be like Monica and Nasser and Joe. But I grew up back in Pennsylvania, and it was a little steel town, and everybody drank. And my mom drank, my dad drank, my cousins, my neighbors. Our neighbors, the nurses, their name was the Lurches, and they didn't drink, so we weren't allowed to play with their kids because they were freaks. And my grandfather was the town doctor. He was not an alcoholic or even a drinker, but he did have a water glass of Old Crow when he got up every morning before he went out to the hospital. And my grandfather on my mom's side, I was appropriately named after him. He was a Russian immigrant steelworker, and he always had a glow on. And this little town that I lived in had a whole bunch of steel mills and factories, and each steel mill or factory had a plant gate for each direction of the compass, and each plant gate had a tavern. So this little town of whatever it was, 9,000 people, had about 40 taverns, and that's where life happened. And when the mill whistles blew at 7 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon and 11 at night, all the people went from the plant gates to the bar and back, and I don't know when they ever went home. And that's where life happened. And I couldn't wait until I was old enough to go where life happened. And I'll tell you something else about me. When I was a little kid, I was like a really neurotic kid. I felt separate from the other kids and different from the other kids and less than the other kids. And I always felt like the other kids were better friends with each other than they were with me. And I was a scared kid. I was always scared something bad was getting ready to happen. I would stay over at my grandfather's house, and he was a widower. And I was scared to stay in his big house by myself. So whenever he went to the emergency room or out on a house call, I would go with him, and I learned just enough about medicine to become a hypochondriac. And then, I always tell this story, and I tell it because it's the truth and it's interesting about how my mind worked when I was a little boy. The school nurse would come in and whisper something to the teacher, and I was sure that she had just told the teacher that they found out I was terminally ill, and I would ask the kid in front of me, I'm terminally ill, aren't I? And it's like, what's wrong with you, And I would sleep over at my friend's house, and you know how you sleep over at your friend's house, and then parents would always have to bring me home at 4 in the morning. I'd be throwing up and gasping for air because just staying like 4 doors down the street created too much anxiety to me when I was 12 years old, and we would go on vacations to the lake, but we'd have to come home the first day because I'd have a pain in my side that wouldn't go away, and they even took my appendix out in hopes that they could then take vacations, and So it got to be. I went to high school, and it wasn't any better. I was like I had horn-rimmed glasses and braces and a pocket protector, and I was just a social moron, And I always say that I hung around with the really cool guys. They were like the 6 or 7 really cool guys. They were like great looking and played sports and got all the girls. And I was like, but I wasn't one of the cool guys. I just hung out with them. I was like a sidekick, like Patsy Weber or somebody. I was like the sidekick guy. I wasn't like the Richie Cunningham or the Fonzie. I was like one of the guys who you don't even remember their name. Like the guy was just always there. It was just more feeling like I was a fish out of water, feeling like I wasn't connected to anything or anyone, and just a feeling that everything wasn't right, and so it came time to go away to college, and I told the guidance counselor I wanted to go to college in Ohio because you can drink at age 18, and she was like mortified by that, but I figured all criteria being the same, might as well, and my brother went to college and law school before me, and he did it with a beer in his hand, and it looked like fun, so I thought I'll do that too. So I went to college, and I went to college in Ohio, and for my freshman year, I was like really just the same as I always was, just scared and, separate from. And so I pledged a fraternity and I played sports and I got okay grades, but mostly I was just walking through the fear, like a fish out of water. And then in the spring quarter of my freshman year, we went into, I was with this guy named Steve Strong, and we went into the college bar called Reed's Bar, which would become a very important institution in my life. And there I met Eve, who had become an important figure in my life. And Eve was the barmaid, and she had platinum blonde hair and big boobs, and she was about 72 or 3. She had been a stripper back in New Jersey or something. And I'm telling you, you talk about love at first sight, And she said to me, "What do you have?" And I said, "I'll have oh, honey, what do you have, honey?" I was like, "Oh, man, I'll have a shot." "Yeah, that's it, a shot." She said, "A shot of what?" And I said, "Why, a shot of gin." "That's it, a shot of gin." And I had many. I had 8 or 10 or 12 of them, And so we're riding around in this guy's car, and I'm throwing up the window of his car, and I'm asking him, "Isn't college great? And can you smell the flowers? And can you see the stars?" And and I was euphoric. Now, I had never been euphoric before in my life, except for when they took my appendix out and they prepped me with the Demerol. Now, this was very telling. And I told the nurse, I said, "You have beautiful hair and beautiful eyes," and I gave her my phone number, I was 12. I gave her my phone number. And I told the doctor, "Cut whatever you like, and thank you so much. Thank you. Cut anything." And this night, I was euphoric at Reed's Bar. The Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says people drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And I love the effect produced by alcohol. And if I could still be drinking, I would still be drinking. I didn't get sober in Alcoholics Anonymous because I thought it was a virtue to be a sober person. I'm in my 20th year of sobriety now, and people are always like, "Wow, 20 years of sobriety." And I always say, it's like congratulating someone with hemorrhoids for not riding horses for 20 years or something. I didn't really have a lot of options. So I came here, and I always, well, I guess I can tell you this. I'm giving my body to, not that there's been great interest in it, but I'm donating my body to UCLA when I die, and I'd like to be a fly in the wall in that lab when the guy puts my brain in the formaldehyde and he hears the, finally. So I was back on the bar stool the next night at Reed's Bar, and I developed all the personality characteristics of an alcoholic right away. Dishonest, resentful, self-pitying, the whole 9 yards. So for me, the disease of alcoholism and the personality that seems to go with it wasn't something that just sort of. It wasn't like something that I got gradually. It's just how I was right from the start. I was a big pain in the ass right from the start. And my mom always points out, since she was paying the tuition, that I managed to squeeze 4 years of college into 6 years. And so like in my second senior year or something, I was watching a George McGovern ad on TV, and he was talking about kicking Richard Nixon out of office and stopping the war and stuff, and it sounded like a good idea to me, so I volunteered to work for George McGovern, and I went, and they sent me out to Oregon to work for him, and I had never been west of Ohio before, and it was, from the time I was a little kid, I always wanted to be this person that sort of rambled around or hopped freight trains or went to sea or whatever, so I became this sort of rambling migrant and political community organizer, and I worked for candidates and causes in most all the 50 states, and it was like a drinking tour of America. Wherever I went, I would just drink what they drank and how they drank, and I had so many fun experiences that I'll just spare you the description of them, but just really had fun. The thing about my drinking is, and my life is, that when I enjoy what I'm doing and my life's going okay, then my drinking would be okay. But when my life goes haywire, then my drinking goes haywire, and that's just sort of how it was for me. And so I'd go along okay and drink 4 drinks and go home and drink 4 drinks at home and maybe get drunk once a month, and then something would happen, and now I would just start drinking heavily all the time, and then it would sort of subside, and then my sort of problem drinking would sort of subside, and that's just sort of how it was. And we're pretty good BSers, and at least I am, in case you hadn't noticed. And so I talked them into letting me manage political campaigns. So I would like run somebody for U.S. Senate in Florida, and run somebody for governor of Iowa, and I just worked around the country doing that. And I became like the champion freeloader, you know, like maybe some guy was running for governor of Florida, and some rich guy, as a contribution to the campaign, would let the out-of-state organizer, me, live at his house, and I would move in, and I would drink his booze and eat his food and date his daughter and walk his dog. And when the campaign was over, I didn't see any reason why I should leave. I'd stay another month, and that's just how I was, and that's why. And they liked having me, but I don't know why. And I always think it's my karma now, again, that these newcomers come to my house and they stay forever, you know. And I always tell this story. It's a true story. This guy took it. I said, Rob is living on my sofa. He's a newcomer. He's living on my sofa. He said, I'm not new. I have 2 years. Time to get the hell off my sofa, you know? So, anyway, my disease progressed. I'll tell you a couple of quick stories. And usually people that promise not to have a long drunk log get sober at about 1 minute to 9. So I hope I don't do that. Stuff happened. I got into this. I was really drunk in Virginia, and I got into a bicycle accident. I smashed my head, and I hurt myself really badly. I had slurred speech and short-term memory problems. But when you're drunk all the time and you slur your speech, you don't remember things. Nobody really noticed that I'd hurt myself that badly. And my friend Henry asked me if I would organize this rally out in the coalfields for Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter was running for president, and he liked Jimmy Carter, and so I went out there to put this rally together where they were supposed to get 50,000 good Democrats and music and food and clogging and all this stuff, and I went out there with slurred speech, short-term memory problems, drinking a quart of gin a day, and mourning the loss of whatever the hell her name was, and I screwed it all up, you know, I mean, really bad. I had the band come on the wrong night. I sent a Volkswagen Bug to the airport for 14 members of the press. And the worst thing was we were out of booze, and Carter was way late, like 5 minutes late, and I told the limo driver, James, go get a six-pack, you know. And so when he landed, there was no car, and we were like an hour late for the rally, and it was just a big nightmare. My friend Henry, he was so mad at me. I'm like, hey, we were out of booze, you know, and that's so what, you know, and he was Billy's brother, he should understand. And I'll tell you something, that's the absolute truth. If I knew he would someday become president, I would have been embarrassed to death. No one else who I ever worked for ever got elected, so I just didn't didn't cross my mind. And the next thing that happened is there was this nice man from Oklahoma. He was a United States Senator from Oklahoma named Fred Harrison. He was running for president, and he asked me to be in charge of his New Hampshire primary. So I went up there, and Jimmy Carter is very happy I'm now on the other side. He figures it's helped his chances, and actually, in retrospect, it did help his chances. And so we had like more volunteers than all the other candidates put together, and we were up there in Manchester, and you know, there was like we were living in this, like, what we called the barracks, or these half-renovated projects that they built during World War II, and some had heat, and some didn't, and some had running water, and some didn't. And we had about 4,000 volunteers from around the country stuffed in there, and we ate en masse and stuff. And there was like 3 feet of snow on the ground. I remember I had a real bad upper respiratory infection and a fever, and I was just beleaguered. I was like Washington at Valley Forge, only drunk, of course. And so one night, this guy, Michael, and I, we sat up and we drank red wine and just so much of it, and we listened to the Bob Dylan Desire album, and all I remember, the next morning I was sitting at my desk, and the right side of my face got numb, and the left side of my body got numb, and I got all scared and confused, and they rushed me to the hospital, and I was really sick, and I was to not work for years. You know, I was just really, really sick. And there was this little doctor, this kind little doctor that lived in Newton, Massachusetts, and he took me home with him, and he and his family tried to nurse me back to health, but after 3 or 4 months they just gave up because they just weren't able to help me. He said I reminded him of someone who was shell-shocked from a war. But whether it was from smashing my head on the bike path, or whether it was some bleeding, or whether I had some kind of a nervous breakdown, or whether I had acute alcohol poisoning. Whatever was wrong with me, it was a result of my alcoholism. And I met this girl. She was sort of my girlfriend slash nurse. Her name was Mary, and she was going to school at UCSB, so she brought me out here with her. And I taught a little bit of political science at UCSB, but mostly, I mean, I was just scared. Like, if I left the apartment and went to the store down the street, I would get anxious and have to run back and hide. I couldn't stand to be out in the world at all. And if I had even a half of a beer, I would get deathly sick, you know. But what happened was, I worked hard to get my tolerance for alcohol back. I worked so that I could drink 3 or 4 beers without getting sick. Well, who else would deliberately increase their tolerance for alcohol except for an alcoholic? The reason being, we don't really know how to live without it. You know, like when we come to Alcoholics Anonymous, we have to stop drinking because we have trouble with, you know, the law or our family or our job or whatever, our health. But at the same time, we can't stop drinking because we don't know how to live without alcohol, and that's the rock and the hard place that we're between when we get here. And so, I just now that I could drink, thought I was too important for Santa Barbara, so I moved to San Francisco and I got a couple of jobs. I got a job running an animal welfare agency, and I got a job as a firefighter for the city. And I got enrolled in the University of San Francisco. So now I'm trying again, you know, and things are going pretty good. And I'm going out. You know, if we alcoholics and Al-Anons, we like to rescue people and pets, and so I would rescue people all night and dogs and cats all day, and then go to the bar and drink and talk about it. And I was controlling and enjoying my drinking, you know. And then comes the part of my story that my friend Art, he always made the sign of the cross. I met this girl named Amy, and she came to work at the animal welfare agency there, and I was just really goofy over this girl, just really cuckoo. It was like an affliction, you know, and I always say that I would rather, I hope I never feel like that again about anybody. And so we were about the same age. I was 33 and she was 18, and she was between her freshman and sophomore years at Cal, and so anyway, it was time for her to go back to school, and she was really having trouble seeing the future in our relationship for whatever reason. And I didn't do anything any good alcoholic wouldn't do. You know, I staked out her house to see what time she was coming home, and I staked out all the guys' houses that I knew she knew, and I would get drunk and visit her at work, and I think that's always a sign of caring when you do that. And I would call up her father in the middle of the night. He was president of the American Psychiatric Association. He taught medicine at Stanford. And he'd always say, "Is this an emergency, son?" I'd say, "Yes, it is. Amy just left the bar with a Coke dealer." He'd say, "Oh, you have to call back tomorrow," you know. And so, you know, I just went down to Sunnyvale where they have George Jones on the jukebox, like If Drinking Don't Kill Me or Memory Will, and I got drunk at her. And I stayed drunk for 2 years. God knows I didn't mean to, you know, and I lost my job for driving a fire engine drunk. I lost my job at the animal welfare agency. I get kicked out of school, and it was really bad. I lost my place to live, the name of the animal welfare agency I worked in was called Pets in Need, and everybody's nickname for me was Pete's in Need. And I would go into a bar, and I would start to drink in the bar, and after about the 3rd day, the bartender would say, "Why don't you just go drink somewhere else?" Or I would walk in the bar, and the bartender would say, "Amy, right?" And I knew I'd been in there, and I'd just turn around, walk right out, and go find a different bar. And I was walking down the street, and this man was coming down the street on the same side of the street as me, and he wanted very much to be on the other side of the street from me because he saw me coming, you know, and he got hit by a car. And I told him, "Serves you right, I was only going to try to borrow $5, you know." Around Stanford University, there are a lot of taverns, and all the bartenders that work in these taverns sell both cocaine and alcohol. And regardless of what tavern they worked in, they all lived in the same house in Menlo Park that looked like a haunted house, the bartender's house. And they let me sleep on the living room floor with a shaggy dog named Bob. And Bob didn't like sharing the floor with me any more than he growled when we went to bed at night. And every morning, and they'd come home at about 2 or 3 in the morning from the respective bars and have all this booze and all this dope, and we'd party all night. And I'd wake up in the morning, and I'd be like, "Oh, wow, man, I'm way too tired from partying to get up, but I'm way too coked up to sleep," and, you know, whatever, that purgatory, you know. And I'd try to find a can of beer that didn't have a cigarette butt floating in it, you know, and then I'd try to find a cigarette butt, but, you know, when you snort cocaine all night, there ain't very many long butts in the ashtrays, you know, and you light it, you gag because it's strong and you're hungover, you know, and then I would just start going through everybody's pants pockets to to try to get some change to go buy some beer and cigarettes, and there I thought, oh, it's probably just pizza and knee going through our pants pockets again, you know. And I woke up every morning like that for a year, and I would rather be dead than to live like that again. I'd much rather be dead than to live like that. I used to go to Pete's little coffee place, like a Starbucks place in Menlo Park, and get a coffee and go sit on a park bench on a cold winter's morning, and I'd sit there and I'd have a quarter, and I'd go over to the payphone, but I didn't have anybody to call. I couldn't think of one person to call. I didn't have a soul in the world, not a soul. And then it got worse. I went to Santa Cruz because that's where all the bums go up there, like they go to Santa Monica here. I should say we actually. And I went over there, and I stayed in the St. George Hotel, which is a luxury hotel when it was built during the Civil War, but it wasn't when I stayed there. It was Salvation Army pays your way, and the whole place is on a tilt, you know, and you put an orange on the floor and it rolls to the wall, and you walk to the men's room like this, and my next door neighbor was Richard. He looked like Charles Manson, and I used to watch him shoot up. I was so fascinated by watching him shoot up, and he had like peanut butter and instant coffee, and the water in the spigot was hot enough to make instant coffee. When you're on the bum, that's a rich guy, you know. And Richard was a classy guy. He had lived in Marin County for 20 years, so I figured that's pretty good. So I asked him one time, Richard, where did you live in Marin County? San Quentin? I said, oh, I should have known that. So I got kicked out of that place. I ended up living outside, begging for food at the back door of restaurants and picking up cigarette butts off the street. And I told my dog Seek we were camping. And I used to go and volunteer at the soup kitchen in Santa Cruz by the roller coaster that the church ran, and I would pretend like I was a volunteer. Yeah, we got to feed these bums, and then I would eat the soup, you know. And so I have a cousin named Eddie that lives in Berkeley, and a cousin named Amy that lives in Santa Monica, and they're both lawyers, and their moms are my mom's sisters, my aunts, and together all 5 of them maneuvered me onto a Greyhound bus in Oakland, and I came down here with everything I owned in a trash bag. My cousin Eddie showed up with 2 $20 bills, most money I've had in a long time, and I came down here to stay with my cousin Amy. And it was a nightmare. Like, I drank everything in her house, and my dogs dug up her yard, and her neighbors were Chinese, and my dogs would jump over, go into their yard, poop in their yard, and bring all their shoes into my cousin's yard. Yeah. Yeah. So it was pretty tough. And I tried to stop drinking so hard, and if you gave me a lie detector test in the morning, it would show that I really meant to stop drinking. I was just going to go look for a job, but I couldn't get past the first bar, and now I'm drinking against my will, and I'm really scared. And at this time, the book says that the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that we know we shouldn't drink, but we see someone else taking a drink with impunity, so we take a drink, and the phenomenon of craving occurs, and we pass through the well-known stages of a spree, and we emerge remorseful, vowing to never do it again, and then we do it again, and everybody in this room is destined to die that way unless we find a spiritual solution to our disease. And so that I'm going through. So my mom sent $1,000 for me to move out of my cousin's house with, and my cousin that weekend went to La Costa with her boyfriend, and I had the house to myself, and I thought to myself, you know, I wouldn't need this whole $1,000 to move out of my cousin's house with, so I had a moving out party. And I got cocaine. I got my drug of choice, which was Tanqueray gin, and I wasn't dating a lot, so I got a couple of dates out of the Yellow Pages, and I had a moving out party. And in the morning, there was like 25 cents left of the $1,000, you know, and I thought, oh man, my cousin's gonna kill me, you know, and I had the worst hangover I ever had. I was just in the bathroom all morning throwing up, you know, and I went into the kitchen, and I got down on my knees on my cousin Amy's kitchen floor, and I asked God to help me. And I had never done that before. And I got up, and I didn't know who to call, and I started going through the book, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And they said, we'll have someone call you. And about 5 minutes later, Jim Barracks called me, and he said, I hear you have a problem. And I said, yeah. And he said, where do you live? I said, I live on 10th Street in Santa Monica. He said, I live on 10th Street in Santa Monica too. I'll be right there. And he picked me up in 5 minutes. And he brought me right here to the Marina Center. And there was a restaurant upstairs at the time, and they took me upstairs, and they bought me a big book, and they bought me dinner, and we came down. And I was sitting right where Joe's sitting, and I don't remember what the lady said that night, but I know that when we were holding hands and saying the Lord's Prayer, I started to cry, and I hadn't cried in years, and I just knew I was all done, you know what I mean? And I was so desperate. You know, if you're new tonight, I hope that you're desperate. And I think a book says we need to be badly mangled, and I was badly mangled. You could have all come out on 2 buses the night before, and I would not have come with you. But you couldn't have blocked the door. You told me I have to go to Australia, I would have gone to Australia. I would have done anything you told me to do. I was really ready, thank God. And I think that's why I haven't had a craving since. I've worked in liquor stores, I've worked in bars. I've never had a craving since. It's just wonderful. So anyway, I got a sponsor, Ronnie W., and he made me have five or seven commitments a week. I don't remember which. I had the cleanup commitment here and was secretary here and all these commitments. But when I was new, I was a cleanup person here. And my cousin gave me this old car, and the brakes went out, and I was afraid she'd take it away from me if she found out, so I just stopped it with the parking brake. And I had all 5 coffee pots from Sunday, Ohio in the back, and so I'm stopping the car with the parking brake, and they're rolling all around. And you know, I was really crazy. Like, I would sit in the back of the room here, and I would come to the Marina Center every night, and I would shout and help the speaker out, and they couldn't get me to be quiet. And I always, this is a true story. I took a 60-day chip at 26th and Broadway, and I gave a rousing 30-minute address. And it took an astronaut, Buzz A, to talk me safely down into my seat. And we're great friends today. But that day he said to me, I hope I'm not here when you get 90 days. I said, I hope you're not either. What have you ever done? You know, so I got all the jobs that you get when you're new. I met a guy, there was some guy here, Bobby, tree trimmer. My sponsor, Ronnie, made me get a job with him. We didn't know he was here on a court card, so I meet him at the laundromat. He's drunk as a dog. Takes me out, just cut any limbs you want. You know, I didn't know. I just cut all the limbs around the bottom of the tree because I'm scared of heights, you know, and he had these 2 prostitutes whose job it was to rake the leaves, and my job was to take him to the methadone clinic every day at noon, you know, with the car and the parking brake and the coffee pots, and then I got a job with some AA guru where it's a, you know, like in a boiler room where you call somebody in Florida and sell them 1 million pens in it, and they just buy them inadvertently, you know, and I couldn't, so I didn't find it necessary to drink, but I didn't find it necessary to work, so I wasn't at my cousin's house very much longer. So my sponsor Ronnie came and got me. He took me to the Claire Foundation up here, and they had beds for men, but I knew they didn't have any beds at the time. So I went into the men's room and I got down on my knees and I asked God for them to please take me in, because I didn't want to be homeless again. That's where I met this man named Arthur East, who Gay knew very well, and he is just really something. And he was probably in his early 70s, and he had like a full head of permed silver hair and a neckerchief and a nice suit, and always drove a nice new car and jingled his keys. And he had been an old mobster. He had worked for Meyer Lansky for 20 years, and he was sober for a long time, and he helped a lot of guys. And he said, well, if you're going to live here, you might as well know where the coffee is. And Art always knew what to say. And so I slept on the sofa in his office for the first couple months until they had a bed, and every morning he'd come in jingling his keys. Mr. Pete, time to get up, you know, and he taught me stuff. It's, you know, if you want to have a happy sobriety, mind your own business. He used to say, you want to be happy? Happiness is just a byproduct of love and service. He said, you need a car, so he gave me his mother-in-law's old car. You need a job. He got me a job working in a liquor store. He's like, you need a better job. He got me a job in charge of fundraising and public relations at Claire Foundation. And I'd run out of gas at 2 in the morning with no money, and he'd come out at 80 years old with a gas can. And I'd be all embarrassed, and he'd say, well, that's what friends are for. And, you know, I wanted to be like Art. I rented a house down in Hawthorne, and I took in all these newcomers, and they burglarized the neighbors, and they caught the place on fire, and we had they overdosed, and we had psychiatric emergencies, you know, and I'd put them in Robert Kennedy Hospital, and they'd make me belts, and but I'd stay, I don't know how Art did, but I stayed sober. But Art was in Santa Monica Hospital, and he was in kind of bad shape, and I'd say, the nurses don't know how to fix my pillows. You have to come and fix my pillows. I'd just put 2 one way and 2 the other. That's all. He just wanted to see me. And there was a little street drunk named Kenny that always lived and hung out in this meeting, and he died of our disease on my front lawn. But he was sober that day that Art died, and he and I were with Art when Art died, and it was a sad thing, but it was a beautiful thing because we were there for him. And the day that he died, he said, you know, and he helped thousands of guys like he helped me. And the day that he died, he said to me, you know, Pete, you're my best friend. You know, and that's the greatest. That's the greatest. And I've had so many wonderful experiences like that. So anyway, what else can I tell you? Ronnie got sick of me. He turned me over to Howard P., an even higher authority. And so Howard, I came here to the Marina Center to read Howard my inventory, and he didn't, and also I said the third step prayer a lot when I was new. It was so important. And Howard knew he was in trouble when I asked him to help me carry my inventory upstairs. And after about 3 hours, he's sort of, his eyelids are getting heavy, you know. And he said, you did what? I said, I slept with his wife. Yeah, don't do that again. He'd nod back off. So, he's the greatest guy. He's the greatest sponsor. He has saved my life, that man. He's just the greatest. So I did I made a list of people that I harmed, and I had a big list, and my worst of them was I wrecked my best friend's wedding in Oregon, and I knew if I went up there, they'd just kill me, you know. And I went, and my friend's wife's name is Mary Jo, and the first thing she did was give me a big hug and a kiss, and she said, you know, Petey, we love you. When are you going to come and stay with us again? And that was so healing. And then the other one I was afraid of, I saw the psychiatrist in Westwood for a long time, and I didn't have any money to pay him, and I just stuck him for the money. And when I got sober, I started sending him like $200 or $300 at a time, and every time I sent him a check, he'd write me a letter. And those letters that he sent me are the treasures of my life. And so that, you know, the steps are, Howard has me meditating in the morning, and what I always say is that the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are the salvation of the goodness in my life, and they really are. So, what else? What else can I tell you? Oh yeah, I'm also a recovered guru. I used to sponsor 15 guys and make them come to my house every Wednesday night. And then one Wednesday night, I just told them, hey, I don't know anything. You shouldn't come back. And we were all relieved. I used to live in my car behind the Marina Center. It's very humbling to be a guru that lives in your car. And there's the coffee guy, Tom, one night, he said, you know, they called my car Pete's Hotel. He said, you know, Pete, you could drive your hotel and make money as a messenger. You get paid every Friday. So I got a job as a messenger, and today I own my own messenger service. I have like 70 employees. It's a multi-million-dollar corporation, and I've had it for 15 years, and I'm spoiled rotten, you know. I mean, my big problem in life is, I want to go to Milan to the La Scala to see the opera, but all they're staging is Verdi because it's the 100th anniversary of his death, and it's like the problems I have today, you know. It's really amazing, you know. The company failed many times. Like, I'd come to work and they'd say, you know, Pete, all the checks you wrote bounced and everybody quit. I'm like, wow, that's bad. Yeah, Pete, that's bad, you know. But I would, dude, I'll be back at it the next day. Come on, let's not give up, you know. And I always say I'm like a frog that fell in a vat of milk and kept splashing around because he didn't want to drown and ended up sitting on a big brick of butter, you know, because I didn't drink and I didn't give up, you know. And Howard's taught me a lot of stuff. I have 10 more minutes now. I'll try to tell you what sort of the meat of all this for me. When I was drinking, I was powerless over my drinking, and I couldn't stop. And the only way that I could stop was to ask God to help me, and God removed the obsession. Then I had another problem. I was still unhappy. The book says selfishness, self-centeredness. This, we think, is the root of our problems. I'm not selfish. Everybody knows that. How about self-centered? What does self-centeredness mean? Not being able to see anything from anyone else's point of view. To only be able to see our things from our point of view. You know, and that became my problem. And you know what happens? You love people, like you know, I might love Joseph, or I love Joe, and I want them to do the right thing, what I know is best, but they don't do it. So I get sore, and I stay sore, and I'm just as powerless over that as I was with the drinking. And I need for God to take that away too. And that's what the inventory is for. And that's just so important. The alcoholic operates in a constant state of low-grade alert, seeing is this outcome favorable to me, or is this outcome favorable to me or not? And the book says that when we're troubled, we stop and we say, your will, not mine, your will, not mine. These thoughts must go with us constantly, you know. And Howard always tells me that if I just do what's put in front of me, and I do it as lovingly as I can and the best I can, that everything will all come out in the wash, and the universe will provide for me, and I don't need to be all worried and scared and try to scam everything for myself, you know. And that's really important. And so I think faith is really faith is the most important thing. You know, Howard had a vision once that he was walking across a frozen lake, and he thought that walking across a frozen lake, taking the third step, is like walking across a frozen lake. And how thick the ice is really depends on how well you work the second step. And if you have a lot of faith, then life's just a happy skate. And if you don't, you're always waiting to fall through the ice. And faith is everything for us, you know. And so every day I try to remember that I need to turn my will and my life over to the care of God and constantly say, your will, not mine, your will, not mine. And to know that everything that happens is ultimately for the greater good. You know, and I always give it the 2-year test, you know, like she doesn't want to go out with me anymore and it's the end of the world. But 2 years later, I'm like, phew, glad I didn't end up with her, you know, and you know, you get fired from a job and you're so sad, but 2 years later, wow, I'm not glad I'm not still working at that place. You know, the universe has a way of redirecting us all for the best, you know. And I just got sick of being dragged through life kicking and screaming, and so today I really try hard to just, you know, accept my life. Whenever I'm sad, and it's usually over like some heartbreak, you know, Howard calls me up and he always says, you know that good feeling that you want to have, the feeling that you're looking for, that you looked for when you were drinking to be at peace and safe and loved and happy, that good feeling? There's not anything that anybody's ever going to say, and there's not anything that anybody's ever going to do to give you that feeling. But when you put yourself in God's hands and you find your safety there, you know, you can then have all these other things in life and it's all just fun and games. And that's so important. And my life is just a, you know, I mind my own business today. You know, I'll help anybody. But I mean, short of that, I always ask myself, you know, have I made all my amends yet? Have I got rid of all my character defects yet? And I haven't, so I'm not ready to work on your program because I'm still working on my program, you know, and it just helps me. You know, when I was at a meeting, when I was new, I was whining about something, and this guy said, you see that sidewalk square you're standing in? I go, yeah. He says, all you got to worry about what's inside that sidewalk square. I said, you don't understand. Bob asked John for a cigarette, and he gave him one. Not in your square. And I think that's important. I also think that meditation is important. I go into my backyard, and when I breathe in, I say the Spirit of God fills me, and when I exhale, I say the Spirit of God surrounds me, and I have to do that in the morning, and that helps me a lot. Or I say to myself that the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are the goodness in my life, and sometimes I'll say the Spirit of love fills me, and the Spirit of love surrounds me, because how important it is to have love. How we all, as alcoholics, need to give and receive love every day. It's really important to us. There was this guy, I came to the meeting one night, and oh, what else can I tell you? Something else. I go to a step study every Tuesday night at some guy's house on Hermosa Beach, and we just go at this. We just read the book, and we just read this much of the book, and then we talk about it, and then when we get to chapter 5, we work the steps together, and we go at the pace of the slowest person, and Mary didn't finish her inventory yet, so we can't go on until, you know, and I work the steps over and over that way, and it's really a lifesaver for me. Don Gates used to always say, if you're in Alcoholics Anonymous and you're not working the steps, you're probably not having very much fun here, you know, and it's true. And and the other thing I was thinking about, quotes that I love, is when I was talking about having faith. Chuck Chamberlain used to always say that you always have been, you are now, and you always will be in God's hands, whether you know it or not and like it or not. We always are. So I was here one time, I was sitting right where Gay was sitting, and this guy gave this talk. He gave the most awesome talk. And then at the end he said, oh yeah, I got diagnosed with lung cancer. So I got that to worry about now, but, you know, day at a time and whatever. I thought, gosh, how could a guy facing that give such a good talk? So after the meeting, I gave him my card, and he said, if I can ever do anything for you, you let me know. And about a week later, you know, he needed $100 or something. He called me, and so I started sort of helping this guy out. And he ended up in the VA hospital, so I went to the VA hospital to see him. And there were 5 other guys who had the exact same relationship with this. His name was Terry Hart. There were like 5 other guys that were there, too, and they had the same, helping Terry, too. So every night after work, we would go and sit around Terry's bed. It was just like a meeting, and we would and then when I would go and speak, Terry would come with me in his pajamas. I'd drive him, you know, and he's just wonderful. And when he died, we went up to San Lorenzo, and to the where we have the retreats, and all the priests are buried up in the top of this tall hill, and somebody had a picture of Terry, and someone else had a bunch of flowers, and Brother Peter had the massive Christian burial, and we all went up this hill, and the grass was about this deep, and all these monks were walking with their, you know, their brown robes and their rope belts, and through the high grass, and we were walking, and the dogs were loping with us up to the top of the hill with Terry's ashes. And Brother Peter read from the Mass of Christian Burial, and then he said, you know, he said, we priests need inspiration too. And watching how you guys took care of Terry for the last year inspired me to be a good priest for another year. And you know, that's the kind of stuff that we get to have here that you can't put a price tag on. You know, and those guys that those guys are my best friends in the world right now that we met around. You know, when you meet somebody around the bed like that, you're buddies with them forever. And my friend Bernie, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I guess, he called me and he said, "I need my hospital buddy." He was this great big tall guy that was a lawyer, really a sweetheart. And so I went to the hospital, Bernie, and had a little heart attack, and I kept him company around UCLA, and unfortunately, and Bernie used to take me to the opera. He's the guy that turned me on to the opera originally, and he gave a lot of money to the opera, so his seats were in the front row. And he could go to the Met or the Scala anywhere because he had given so much money. And so he took me to the opera and he taught me about the opera. And he'd fly to Milan with a Stradivarius that belonged to somebody just to repair it, you know. And he was really just awesome. And one morning we found out that Bernie had a heart attack and he had died. And so we had a funeral for him down here at St. Mark's in Venice. And about a week later, his son, I received something in the mail from his son. And it was his opera tickets. And he said, "I was going through Dad's stuff, and I came across these opera tickets." And he said, "I know he'd want you to have them." And he said, "He'll be there with you sitting there singing along, I know." And so what happened was, I guess they figure I have some connection to Bernie, so every year I get him in the mail in the front row again, and now so I always think of him when I go, you know. And these are just all the great stuff that that we get to have happen to us here. So anyway, I hope we all stay sober, and I hope you're all good to each other, and thank you all for. I'm one of these people that's needed a lot of help over the years, you know, because I'm sensitive, you know, and so many of you have helped me through my times here. So thanks a lot for your friendship to me, and thanks for listening to my talk.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.